Now, to statists of the right,
Again, calling people statists, just stop. Just stop. Just call them right-wingers. Just call them rightists. Just call them conservatives. Whatever. You don't need to call them statists, dude. I mean, I get that a lot of libertarians or ANCAPs kind of right-leaning, technically, economically, but still, why?
claim you're opposed socialism and don't see government as the answer, and yet invariably you're celebrating the cops, the first responders, and the fire departments, and the jails, war, all big public sector programs. It's a kind of the socialism that you love. Why do you think that that's going to work better than the private sector?
Now, I do agree that it's some sort of hypocrisy to sort of oppose all socialism and then look at socialist programs, like police forces and such, and be in support of those because those are socialized technically. But the thing is that even people who are really in support of capitalism can see that it's just a bad idea to privatize cops. It's just a bad idea to privatize first responders. I would even argue that it's not a great idea to privatize things like healthcare, because those things are necessities. Those things are things that people need. And when you have somebody who money is in their only interest, that's their only interest, do you really think they're going to be supporting the people? Like, think of a privatized police force, okay? Then the police are just going to help people who give them money. Is that fair? Is that just in any way? Same thing with first responders. Oh, it's an emergency. I'm dying. Oh, do you have money? No. Okay, then I'm not going to help you. That's what it would be if things like first responders were privatized. Like, how can you not understand that? How do you think that would work? It would just be based on who has money and who doesn't.
If people are innately good, what is the need for government? And if people are innately evil, what is to stop them using government to cause evil to one another? And would it not be better that their influence be limited to that which they can achieve voluntarily, rather than to give them the added benefit of legitimised force?
So in other words, you're just saying government is bad either way. But here's the thing. People are neither innately good nor innately bad. Some people are good, some people are bad. There are always going to be good people and bad people no matter what. So we have to work with that. We do need government because there are bad people who always try to take over. And government doesn't always have to be utilized against the people because some people are good. These people just have no understanding of nuance. Everything is black and white to them. Or, more accurately, black and yellow. Again, the reason why big governments exist is because individuals can't do some of the things that big governments can. Like, why do you not understand this?
A major question that I have for proponents of state economic regulations in particular is how exactly can you sleep at night knowing the economic destruction that you have created? The effect of government regulations on output has been calculated to have an accumulated reduction cost on the American GDP of nearly $40 trillion just since 1949. In other words, absent of any federal economic regulations, after World War II, we could have tripled our GDP. Every citizen could have an average income of $333,000 instead of $53,000, a $277,000 increase in the average income. This doesn't even factor in the cost of compliance, rent-seeking, and state-level regulations. We could have had so much more prosperity and so much less poverty without state regulations on our economy. So how can you look your opponents in the eye and claim that your regulations are somehow for the common man?
Okay, first of all, this guy is such an idiot. He's like, how do you sleep at night? You guys are all so evil and you're preventing the economy from prospering. The reason why there are regulations is because, again, corporations usually only have money-making and interest, okay? Especially when you get to the very top of it. Corporations, the CEOs and stuff, again, their main interest is to make money. That is the objective of them existing. And because of that, they're gonna be more likely to abuse and take advantage of people who are poor. So no, the average income would not go up. You're assuming that all of the money that corporations would make would just be equally distributed to everyone, which is ironically the sort of socialism that you argue against. It wouldn't work like that. Capitalism works like the rich get rich and the poor get poor. Now, there are different benefits and disadvantages to this system, but yeah, if companies just made more money, guess who would be getting that money? The people at the top of the company, not the people at the bottom of the company. The average income, yeah, would probably increase, but it would increase in terms of extremes. Like, there are some people who are very, very rich, and there are some people who are very, very poor. It wouldn't be equally distributed to everybody and get rid of poverty or anything. Unless, of course, those companies gave all that money to the poor, which you're saying that they shouldn't. Like, what are you even arguing, dude?
Left-wing statists.
Please stop calling everybody statists. This is honestly getting on my nerves.
When you're opposing drug laws, especially weed, you argue the government shouldn't be so powerful that it can tell people what they can and can't put into their own bodies. So why, when it comes to gun laws, do you think the government should be so powerful that it can have a complete monopoly over effective force?
You're just making that same argument, but in reverse. I don't think we should take away guns or anything. I really don't. I just think that maybe there should be more background checks and stuff and make it like a little bit harder to get guns to make sure that, nobody who's mentally ill or has criminal record has possession of a gun. But yeah, I would argue that at least stuff like weed doesn't kill people. Guns do. And again, I just think there should be more regulations, not necessarily a limit on anything, or making anything necessarily illegal. Look, you guys just think in absolutes. You think that people who are against drugs want to ban all drugs, and people who are against guns want to ban all guns, when that's really not the case.
Here are the things you can't do without government permission. Build a house, drive a car, own a gun, go fishing, collect rainwater, hunt, cross the road, get married, leave the country, start a business, fly on a commercial plane, take drugs, work. It's actually hard to think of something that doesn't require government permission. Knowing this, how can you say you're free?
Knowing this, how can you say you're free? This guy is so serious, and I also have a suspicion he's super stoned because of how slow he talks. Those are like things that you need a license for. It's pretty easy to get a license for that. It's not like you can't get a license ever and then you can't do anything ever. I mean, it's pretty easy for you to do things like cross the road and stuff like that, right? It's not something that you have to go up to the federal government and ask permission for. So yeah, you are free to do those things, basically. And things like collecting rainwater, nobody really cares about. There may be technically laws on the books for that, but nobody really cares either way. Nobody's going to enforce that. What are you talking about? You're acting like we're just living in a complete authoritarian regime where we literally can't do anything. And that's not the case.
If being a democratically elected constitutional republic creates legitimate political authority, does that mean that all the things that were done by the democratically elected constitutional republics of the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and North Korea, all those things were legitimate and justified?
No, just because a dictator is democratically elected doesn't mean that they're not a dictator. It doesn't mean that they're not authoritarian. Like, you're basically comparing, U.S. government that was democratically elected and other democracies that have elected officials to Nazi Germany and, Hitler and Stalin and the Kim dynasty. Like, no, they're not that bad. Those governments have their problems, but guess what? They're not totalitarian regimes. They're not that bad.
If you're a proud, government-loving liberal who champions personal choice, could you please explain why I can't choose to not fund the murder of innocent children abroad?
Because the government usually isn't transparent about that kind of stuff, about drone strikes and stuff. And that's a shame. I think they should be transparent about that. I think we should have the right to vote against that. But it's not like you can choose what the government decides to do with your money. The government is going to do what they want to do with your money. And again, that's a shame if it goes towards bad things that shouldn't be happening. That's not anything you have control over. I mean, you're saying, like, that people should basically dictate every single thing that the government can spend its money on at every single time. You know how long that would take? That would just be inefficient. And again, it's a shame when abuses of stuff like that happens. But there's not that much we can do about it. And liberals are not proud, government-loving people. Like, again, I don't love the government. No one loves the government. Everybody sees it as a necessity, except for you guys who think that somehow that you can exist without a state. And it's funny how you guys rip on communists all the time, because you and communists pretty much want the same thing. You want a stateless utopia. You just want to get there in different ways. But again, none of that is going to happen. You can't not have a state. Like, it just can't happen. A hierarchy of some sort is going to form, and especially when you have a stateless government, somebody is going to take over and take advantage of that and turn it into a dictatorship, probably. That's why communism fails. That's why your anarchism stuff fails. Because somebody takes advantage of that system, and that's an unfortunate reality. But again, some people are bad people. That's gonna happen, whether you like it or not.
If you've ever said there ought to be a law, or if you believe that government is the best solution to most of life's problems, I have one question for you. Are you prepared to kill? Every law, no matter how big or small it appears to be, is backed by violent force, and in many cases, death.
No, not every single law is backed by violent force. What are you talking about? Are you talking about the military? What are you talking about? Like, what? Are you prepared to kill if you support the government or think it's a solution? Again, I don't really support the government. I just see it as a necessity, like most people do. These people make no sense. What? What every single law is backed by violent force. What world do you live in, honestly?
You really want the same people who run the DMV to be in charge of your health care?
No, the people who are in charge of the DMV are not in charge of your health care. Like, what are you talking about? I guess technically on a federal government level, yeah. But here's the thing. Healthcare is a necessity. And so people like myself who argue for universal healthcare argue for it because it's a necessity, it's not a luxury. I agree that luxuries should be privatized because that's the most efficient way for them. And, it would just be stupid to have luxuries that were publicized. But again, healthcare is a necessity. Why do these people not understand this?
Why is it that you prefer anti-discrimination laws which force those who hate other races to hide that prejudice and make money off of those other races, to a system where they could be open about said prejudice and lose money?
What are you talking about? So, in your ideal world, if there was no such thing as anti-discrimination laws, people would be openly, blatantly racist, and they would lose money because of it. Like, how would that work? Would people steal from them because they're blatantly racist or sexist or homophobic, whatever, and then they're making money off of hiding their prejudices? Like, how does that even work? No, if we legalize discrimination, then discrimination happens, and whatever group is being discriminated against is probably going to be the one losing money and whatnot. Like, how does the money go away? I mean, I guess maybe you're saying if they're opening a business and they're discriminatory, then they might not be successful as a business that's not discriminatory. Sure, that could happen. But they're still discriminated against people, and that's still wrong. How much money they make is irrelevant. The discrimination is the part that matters. What are you talking about?
You guys often say that libertarians have too much faith in the goodness of people. Why then do you, in the same breath, argue that I give up my right to bear arms and entrust my personal safety to police in gun-free zones? That seems like pretty strong faith in human nature to me.
Wait, what? This question literally makes no sense. If you think that libertarians, by which they mean ANCAPs, by the way, not all libertarians are crazy, as these people hashtag not all libertarians. I would argue ANCAPs do have too much faith in the good of people because they're arguing that if we had no state and it was just an anarchy system, the purge wouldn't happen. I don't know how that's not inevitable. Like, obviously, people are going to kill other people and all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's just going to be chaos. But anyway, moving on, you're saying taking guns away from people. Again, most anti-gun people, I would argue, are not for that. But taking away guns from people has good faith in means that you have good faith in humanity. Wouldn't that mean that you have bad faith in humanity because you don't trust individuals with guns? Like, what? It literally contradicts itself. Taking guns away from people would mean that you wouldn't have faith in humanity because you wouldn't trust individuals with guns.
Status.
Stop with the status thing. Please just treat the non-ANCAPs like normal people. That might be the first step in actually making some sort of a connection with them. Like, this whole status thing is just ridiculous and alienating, but most of all, it makes you guys look really bad and stupid.
Since the war on drugs has been an absolute failure, what makes you think a war on guns would be any different?
Yeah, I would argue that if there was a war on guns, like there is the war on drugs, that would be pretty bad. But again, guns and drugs are not the same things. These people try to equate guns and drugs. Like, the difference is that there are a lot of drugs that just don't really cause any harm. And there are obviously drugs that you can't really take in moderation that do cause harm. But with guns, those are inevitably going to cause harm if they're misused, that is. Now, I would argue that people could use guns in moderation and, not really cause harm with it. But again, they're two different things. They're two completely different things. And I do get that it's a issue of personal freedom, usually with both of them. But again, they're different things. Guns kill people. Drugs don't always kill people. Like, these people just don't understand this. Oh, look at this next guy, Ancap. Like, these people either want to be walking memes, or they just don't realize that they're walking meme. I can't tell which one it is.
Can you morally justify the federal government preventing a small territory from seceding from a larger country?
Maybe it's because it would create more conflict. You know, maybe like the Civil War, hello? Like, these people just have no understanding of history. And yeah, I guess if a group wanted to separate itself, if it really wanted to, and if everybody in that group wanted to, then yeah, I guess they could. But the problem with something like secession is with things like the Civil War, the South was abusing the rights of others by enslaving them. So that was a human rights abuse. Now, you could argue if the South was its own separate country already, then, yeah, the federal government wouldn't really have the right to step in because it's a different country. But again, like, that starts conflicts like the Civil War, that starts human rights abuses and stuff. It's a bad precedent, and we could argue about the ethics of it. But you know, when people think about secession, they think about the Civil War. That's literally just it. That's what happens. So I'm sorry, maybe it shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is.
How is me writing down "I'm in charge" and then getting 20 friends to sign it any different from the drafting of the Constitution?
Because the drafting of the Constitution had rules for how the government should deal with the people. It had a balance of power so that it wasn't absolute power. If you just took absolute power, then that would be one thing, but the U.S. government, when it was first founded, did not take absolute power. It granted some rights to its citizens. It granted some rights to the states. Like, these people make all these false equivalences. They act like the U.S. government is some totalitarian dystopia that just inhibits all freedom ever. But really, that's not the case. It does definitely inhibit freedom in a lot of cases. But it's not absolute like these people think it is.
If roads are so complicated and magical that they can only be built by governments, then why do they hire private companies to actually build the eh? My fucking road!
Yeah, this guy is just so weird. I have no idea why he films himself while he's naked, or going to the bathroom, or whatever. The reason is because they need people to construct those roads. Even though they mandate how the roads are built, it's not like there's government contracted road builders. Like, what are you even saying?
Why is every logical explanation we provide about how something will work just pure speculation, while any doomsday scenario you pull out of your ass about anarchism is absolute truth?
Maybe it's because anarchism just won't work. I mean, yeah, and if they provide some sort of explanation and it actually has validity in reality, then I'll acknowledge that as actually validity in reality, like I have with a few of these people. But again, ANCAPs are so detached from reality that they often don't have good explanations of things. They just don't, because they see everything through this specific ideological government bad lens. And the thing is, like I said, anarchism doesn't work. Let me ask a question for all of these ANCAPs. Why doesn't communism work? Think about that for a minute. Why doesn't communism work? It sounds good in principle. If all people were good like you think they are, then it would work, right? But it doesn't. Why doesn't it work? Just think about that for a while, ANCAPs, if you're watching this. Why doesn't it work? Okay, time's up. I mean, I bet your answer was probably something under the lines of, oh, it hurts the economy. And that's not really the real reason why it leads to dictatorships, though. The reason it leads to dictatorships is because some people are bad, and they will inevitably take the power, especially when people try to get rid of the state, so that there's basically like a vacant spot for a dictator to take over. And you guys want the exact same thing, just a different way of getting to it. And so the exact same thing is inevitably going to happen. It just makes sense. What I'm trying to say is that communism doesn't work primarily for the same reasons that anarchism doesn't work. And you guys somehow fail to realize that to you it's all about the economy, but you fail to take into account human nature, just basic human nature.
How highly do you think of yourself that you think it's your right to impose your views on people you've never met and tell them it's good for them?
Take a look in the mirror. That's all I have to say. Yes, there are, of course, ideologues who will push their ideologies in anybody else's face and tell them that it's the morally correct way to behave. And I respond to those kind of people all the time, like I'm responding to you guys now. You guys are ideologues too, and you somehow don't realize that. Just the lack of self-awareness is astounding.
Listen to this ridiculousness. We protect our president with guns, but our children with paper gun-free zone signs. Congress has a 9% approval rating. Government can't even balance a budget. We are about to reach a $20 trillion debt. Social Security and Medicare and other socialist policies are unsustainable. The drug war kills more people than drugs itself. How can you say government is effective?
Listen to this ridiculousness. I'm so stoned, man. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But it, has something to do with anarchy, so it must be right. I think I'm going to put it in this video. And just because the government has failed policies doesn't mean it's effective on other fronts. You just look at the bad stuff and think, oh no, the government must be 100% good, 100% agree with me, otherwise the entire government is bad. Again, you guys think in such absolutes. There's just no nuance in your arguments at all.
Now, to the status of the left and right.
Ooh, status of the left and right. You're being more encompassing, but you're still calling everybody statists. Why can't you just say liberals and conservatives?
Who are constantly against free trade and promoting protectionism and warlike foreign trade policies. Why is it that you think trade between nation states is any different from trade between states in the U.S., between Vermont and New Hampshire or Georgia and Mississippi, which we understand is a good thing because it broadens the division of labor and makes everybody better off? Why do you not see that that's also true internationally? And why do you think a solution to this non-problem is to raise taxes on the American people?
Trade deals are not a non-problem. Case in point, NAFTA. You guys are acting like there's no precedent, there's no reason why people should be against free trade deals and whatnot. It leads to abuses of people's freedoms. It leads to loss of jobs, pretty much. And, destruction of factories, which is exactly the kind of things you would be against. You guys you don't look into history at all. I have a feeling like these people have no idea how history or government works at all, because that's the vibe I'm getting.
When an individual's moral conscience conflicts with the commands and rules of lawmakers and law enforcers, is an individual morally obligated to do what they believe to be wrong simply to obey the law?
A lot of people are opposed to current laws. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's nobody who 100% agrees with the laws in their country. So what's your point? Yes, they are technically obligated to do it because it's the law. Now, if it's an unjust law, then yeah, I would agree that it's immoral that they're obligated to do it. But that's a whole other thing. It is technically the law. And that's just the nature of things. What do you want us to do, honestly? You do realize you can petition laws. You can write your congressman. You can have protests, even though those don't really tend to be that effective. You can do things to improve that. You guys are just sitting there oh, I'm such a victim. I don't like this certain law. Well, get over it, dude. Nobody likes all the laws. Do something about it for once in your life.
You keep saying I have to be moral by voting for a lesser evil this year. Could you please explain how any kind of evil is ever moral?
Okay, I'm not one of the lesser of two evils people. I honestly don't get the people who try to enforce other people to do the lesser of two evils when it comes to Hillary versus Trump. So I actually do agree with you in that sense. But I think the reason that they make those arguments is that because it's relative. It's yes, it's not good to vote for either of them, but according to them, one is worse than the other. So don't vote for the worst one, just pick the better one. It's if, say, you don't like asparagus, but you also don't like broccoli, but you're inevitably going to end up having to eat one or the other. It's just the way things work. People are going to suggest which one they want you to eat. It's all relative. They may not like broccoli either, but they may see broccoli as better than asparagus. I don't know where I'm going with this analogy, but you get what I mean. This is just basic relative figuring things out, and I agree that you shouldn't necessarily be pressured to vote for Hillary or for Trump, but you do have to just listen to their arguments, even though those people were both really bad candidates, because you were going to end up with Hillary or Trump either way, even if you chose to vote for a third party. And I think you should totally have the right to vote for a third party. Still, people are going to make these arguments because you're going to end up with Hillary or Trump either way. That's just the way it's going to go.
Given my first question to right-wingers and my second to left-wingers, comparing drug rights, which half of you advocate, and gun rights, which the other half of you advocate...
Again, they're not the same thing. Like, people have their various arguments, but I'm pretty sure a conservative who's against drug rights and liberal who's against gun rights see guns and drugs as different things. Like I said, I'm kind of conflicted on the issue, but they're not the same thing, dude. Like, only you consider drugs and guns to be the same thing.
It seems to me that there are two possible compromises. Either we go full authoritarian and none of you get what you want, or we go full libertarian and you can both have what you want. Which sounds more appealing to you? And given that answer that you gave, don't you think there are one or two other issues we could apply this reasoning to?
Or, maybe we can, like you said, both let them have they want, but also have some regulations in place. Like, these people just want a free-for-all. And you said, let's apply this to other issues. No, not free-for-all. Have some regulations, some form of government, something, you idiots. The outro was even cringier than the intro. Why am I not surprised? I have a feeling that these are all people who are, well, except for some exceptions, like maybe that guy T. Lawrence Souther and the Julie lady, but most of these people are just mentally 12-year-olds who jerk off to boy bands, like the one that they included in the outro. Yeah, anyway, this was an awfully cringy video, and it was also unscripted, so I don't know if my arguments I made against him were that great, but I hope you realize the stupidity. I know this is a really long video, but I think it kind of had to be made. I'd refute all their arguments because these people are just wonderful and cringy, and I hope they keep existing. I never want to ban anything they say, just so that we can have them as a continuous source of entertainment. I know even when the pendulum shifts with, SJWs and far-right people, these people are always going to be there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for watching.
Feel the funk blast!